So upgrades are very closely related. Upgrades follow the exact same process, except that you aren't restoring from a backup. You are simply copying over, as I did here at the command line. You're copying over your existing plugin configuration, dynamic plugins, etc., to your new environment. There are a couple things to be aware of in terms of planning and organizing an upgrade. First and foremost is going to be to check the change logs. You want to look at the change logs for whatever release you are going to be upgrading to, and all of the releases since your release. So if you're going from, for example, 4.1.1 to 4.2.0, you're going to want to see everything that's happened between those releases. But there is one in here you can skip, which is a 3.7.2. That's not going to affect the 4.2.2 release. So seeing what things are fixed, say you got a hot fix deployed in your environment for GitHub 12862. This has been fixed in the 4.2.1 release, so you can remove that hot fix. If you have a hot fix for something and it gets fixed in a later release, you want to remove that hot fix in case the actual official release code is slightly different from the hot fix. You want to make sure you're running the actual latest and greatest code. And there is a possibility of actually ending up with broken code in other ways, because the way that it finally gets hot fixed in the official branch may break other things, depending on how, break other things relative to the hot fix. So you want to be real careful to make sure you remove any unneeded hot fixes. And this will also tell you, if you have custom plugins, this will give you some guidance as to whether those are going to need to change, whether you're going to need to recode some of those. And we can provide some guidance on what will, like if we have something that gets deprecated, or we've moved over to doing more REST API things with that, then we may have some better guidance on how to write those plugins better, or you may not even need some of them anymore. The next step in preparing for an upgrade is to just download the version you want to use and point it at a backup of your database and assets and plugins, and fire it up and see what works and what doesn't. One thing you may need to do if you're dealing with an environment that has been running dotCMS for a couple of years, there's a tool called Fix Asset Inconsistencies, which I'll talk about in more detail in just a minute. If you're upgrading from something older than 2.0, there's a tool that's actually no longer in the 4x interface. You have to upgrade to 3 before you upgrade it to 4. But there's a tool that will migrate all of your legacy pages and files to the current standard. And of course, we recommend doing full integration and regression testing in a test environment to be sure that all of the functions that you use in dotCMS are operating properly, and to make sure that the UI level is working the way you expect it to. And when you deal with like upgrading from 3 to 4, there's a substantial change in the user interface. So getting users trained on the new interface is also going to be a part of that. Once all of the testing and preparation is done in the testing environment where you determine what needs to be changed, everything's been fixed, all the content has been updated. At that point, what we recommend doing is implementing a content freeze, and then run through the process in each environment. And that process being the same as what we would do here, where you simply restore your backup. Restore your backup to your database, restore your assets, copy your plugins over, your dynamic plugins, your Elasticsearch. In this case, if you are doing an in-place upgrade where you're just upgrading the same server, then it would be much like how I have it here. where you just got another folder next to it. You copy over the stuff here, you shut down the old dotCMS, you start up the new one, you'll end up with a few minutes of downtime on your production-facing server because the upgrade process running in the database has to run during startup. One way that people will deal with that is they'll actually do a parallel upgrade where they set up a new server, get dotCMS up and running there. It's all good. Implement a content freeze, but their public-facing site is still running fine. Make sure that the content on the new server is fully up to date, and then flip the DNS between the two. So you end up with no downtime. And that's probably the most recommended approach to doing production upgrades. You cannot have the two different versions of dotCMS pointing at the same database. That will cause data loss and data corruption if you try and point a 421 and a 422 instance at the same database at the same time, you will have data corruption. And you cannot go backwards. Like if you connect a 422 instance to a database, it upgrades the database. The database is now set for 422. You can't then go back and run a 420 instance against that database because, again, things will be broken. You'd need to restore from the 420 version of the database.